Hello guys, thanks for tuning into this video. I want to be talking about one of the most underappreciated aspects of fitness, and that's going to be mainly the hips. I want to talk a little bit about the legs and the feet today too, because they have a large role on telling the hips how to react to certain stimulus. So just to start off, I want to go over the anatomy of some of the hips. These pink lines right here represent some of the muscles. Mainly the bigger ones that have a large role on controlling the legs and the hips and where to bend. But the first one I want to bring up is this line right here. So the psoas major is one that connects to the lower vertebrae and then shoots down in front of the hip bone and connects to the femur here. So its job is to raise this leg up, and so you can tell that the hip doesn't need to move during this action. It's just the leg. So that muscle shoots through the hips and pulls up the leg. Now that's going to be really important in posture, and I'll go over that here in just a second. So let's go ahead and talk about the glute muscles. So this pink line here, imagine that being kind of behind the hip. This is facing towards us, so this is going to be the front part. So this one's going to attach mainly to the back of the femur and to the back of the hip bone, or kind of the sides. The glute's job, so imagine if we use the psoas major to step up, we're going to use the glute to finish off that step. That's what gives us the power back here. So whenever you're doing glute bridges or squats, you need the glute to make this angle greater. So at this point, we're going to activate the glute and we're going to move the hips. So these two kind of work together, and having these pairs is kind of a big deal in understanding what you're doing. So over here, so we've got the pectineus muscle, I believe. That one's going to start around the front of the hip bone and connect to the femur. Its main job is going to be kind of adducting or bringing the leg in. So imagine if the leg was extended, you're going to pull that muscle to bring it in. And then kind of on the opposite side is going to be the what is that? On the opposite side of the pectineus muscle, we have the piriformis. And the piriformis is more of a rotating muscle. So imagine if you're standing tall, standing still, your feet are forward, and then you turn your foot outward. So that action's way up here in the hip, and that's a lot of muscles going performing that action. But these are just a few examples of how the hip works. The hips are, whenever you talk about mobile hips, it's more about how mobile the muscles in the hips are. So let's go ahead and dive into posture. So one of the biggest things I see in posture is going to be a tight psoas major and a weak glute. And with this pair, whenever they become uneven, one becomes dominant. And the dominant one is usually the psoas major. And so imagine you just got out of 12 years of school, and you've been sitting down most of those years, and you've been stretching out the glute and activating the psoas to sit down in that chair. So after so long, your body will adapt, and that's where you start to get tight hips and where your posture starts to go down. So once the glutes become weak, everything posterior will start to adapt to that also. So make sure the glutes are strong, the psoas is stretched in that case. So what really happens is your hips become tight. They don't think they need the mobility to perform any action, so they're just going to start collapsing from misuse. So with posture, you really need to understand that the hips have a lot of ability, and whenever you don't use it, you'll lose it. So posture can tell us a lot about pain as well. If you have tight hips that are causing pain, it is because of those muscles not being able to work with each other. They're either fighting or causing problems, blocking nerves. That's where sciatic pain comes from, is tight hips in general. So take care of your hips and realize that whenever you walking is one of the best things to do for your hips. And as long as you do it right, you're going to improve them, not make them worse. So real quick, let's talk about walking. And as a personal trainer, I find all of these little things to be necessary. You're not going to make one or two big changes, and that's going to be your tool for success. Your tools for success are a bunch of little things that you do. So walking, we do this every day. So let's just talk about how we can walk better. And what I like to do is exaggerate the knee coming up, because that gives us a really good chance to activate the psoas muscles. So we're going to take a step up, and just as a horse would, go ahead and kind of take a bite out of that step. And now when you do this, of course, you want to make sure you keep standing tall, and this is going to give plenty of action for the hips. I want you to notice how other people walk and how they don't want to use their hips. They just want to use their legs to mosey around. And this is going to be very detrimental on the body because you're not using the necessary muscles. Now, another good exercise, obviously, for the hips is going to be the squat. Now, just like with walking, you can primarily use other muscles other than what you need to be using. So what I see in the squat from people who are doing it wrong are mainly using their quads or their back to just drop down, and there's not a whole lot of control in the hips. So it's very important on the squat to think about the glute muscle here, because that's going to be your main driver up, your control down. But the movement is a hip movement. So let's talk about how the hips work. So for the most part, you want to keep the hips stable. And then your first movement is actually going to be back. So you want the glutes back here to start engaging and to be stretched. So we're going to tell the glutes, all right, this is your job. So let's come back, make sure the back is straight. And then from here, you're just sitting in a chair, keeping the hips back, and then we'll just go all the way down. And then once you come up, make sure you're activating the glute to come up and not just shooting yourself up. So another really good exercise, it's kind of similar to the standing row that I did a few videos back on the back, but it's just going to be the deadlift. Now the deadlift is another one for the glute, and you'll notice that these exercises are really dominant on the glute. So whenever you do the deadlift, it's pretty much a stretch and activation of the glute. Let me give an example. So we're standing tall. This is how you should start in a deadlift. Make sure everything is activated in the hips, including the glutes. So again, the first movement's going to be back. Let's bend the legs just a little bit. And you only bend the legs so much. So let's say just slightly. We got the legs bent, the hips are back, and the back is straight. So from here, all we do is stretch out the glutes, keeping the back straight. And if you do this correctly, it may even feel like a hamstring stretch. So you'll go down, feel the stretch, and right before you start to lose your good posture is whenever you should go up. So go, get a good stretch, and activate. Really squeeze the glutes. This is going to be really important for making the hips stronger. If your hips are stronger, you can do more, and your workouts will be so much more effective. So realize that the hips in general are a very big part of your exercises. And real quick, I'll go over the legs and feet. So of course, the muscles in the hip have a huge responsibility for the legs, but the feet also, if your feet aren't straight, these bones aren't going to line up correctly. So it's important whenever you're doing whenever you're walking, you're doing the squat, or you're deadlifting, that your feet are straight, and if out, only out slightly. So that way you're really setting your body up for being strong, anatomically correct, and all this can reduce pain, make you feel stronger and more confident in the gym. So take this information, apply it, and I guarantee you'll get the results. Steady gains.